So up to the second aliyah and the Torah reading for Reeh, which starts with verse 11, which is found in Deuteronomy, or the book of Devarim, chapter 12. And it will be that the place the Lord your God will choose in which to establish his name there, you shall bring all that I am commanding you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your separation by your hand, and the choice of vows which you will vow to the Lord. So that's going to be Yerushalayim. Now, before Yerushalayim got established, there was many locations that the base of Mikdash traveled, and that happened. You could read about that in the books after the Torah. You know, there's a book of Yeshua and Shoftim, and in Kings 1 and 2. So there's different books after the 5 books of Moses, which talks about all the history right after the conquest. And then we get into the Mishnah, and then there's the Talmud, and then really there's not so many other books that are within the canon of Judaism. There's other books that are outside the canon of Judaism, like the books about the war of the Maccabees, for example, the book of the Hanukkah Wars. So that Hanukkah Wars are not generally studied by Dati people. Some Dati people do study, like academians, but really those are considered like Hitzornit, like those books about the book of Maccabees. It's outside the Jewish canon. Why that happened, how that happened, not for now. I just want to mention there's 24 books that are part of the established Jewish canon, and obviously the 5 books of Moses is part of that. And here we go. Okay, so I don't know, I got off sidetracked. Okay, but anyways, Yerushalayim is the place it's talking about in verse 11. Okay, I don't know how I got so sidetracked. Sorry about that. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God. Here again, verse 12. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, and your sons and your daughters. Hey, hear that, women? You're also women can be happy, guys. You can't stop the women from being happy. There's a pasuk in the Torah, and your men servants and your maid servants. So even people that are working for you are supposed to be happy. So even they're working and they're working for you specifically, like you hired somebody, they should be happy. And the Levite who's within your cities. Now, remember, the Levites, we're not supposed to kind of oppress them with specific work, because they have the job at the base of Mikdash, and when they're not at the base of Mikdash, they're supposed to be teaching. So the Levites were kind of like teachers, so they should be happy too. Even for he has no portion or inheritance with you. So the Levite doesn't get a specific part of the land, and how does the Levite survive? The Levite doesn't get this inheritance of the land, but so he's not going to ever be a landowner of the Levites. But what can the Levites survive on? You give them tithes, and they can have their own professions, but really they're supposed to be the teachers. So they work at the base of Mikdash. So the Levites had lots to do. And I guess they got some kind of salary. We did donate money, so I'm guessing they received some kind of stipend, some kind of money. They needed money to go shopping, right? And they can't survive only in the tithes. Beware, at least you offer up your burnt offerings any place you see. So you know what? This is Judaism isn't just stam, do whatever you want. Yeah, it's hefker. Come on. Yeah, I totally believe. Come on, it's all about whatever I believe in. No. That's not Judaism, Baklal. Judaism Baklal is actual rules and order, and it's written in the Torah, and then the rabbis elaborate on it to tell us more specifically when the Torah is being vague or not very clear, that we have the rabbis to help us out. But these are some pretty clear pasukim. You just can't do whatever you want. But only in the place the Lord will choose, in one of your tribes, there shall offer up your burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I command you. I should mention again that this is Yerushalayim. Eventually, this is going to become Yerushalayim. And however, in every desire of your soul, you may slaughter and eat meat in all your cities, according to the blessings of the Lord your God, which he gave you. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, of the deer and as of the gazelle. So if you're hungry, when you're hungry, you don't have to go all the way to Yerushalayim to eat. You can eat as long as it's kosher meat. And you don't, if you're in a state of what it means of unclean and clean, that means you specifically. So if I'm in a state of tumah, a state of ritual impurity, which can happen due to physical things that come out of my body. Even men have it. Men have it too, not just women. It's not just about the women's menstruation cycle. Men also have things that cause them to become tumah, which is a state of ritual impurity. But if I'm hungry, I can still eat. Even though I'm in a state of tumah, I can still eat. I can't eat ritually pure food. I can eat food that's for me to eat. However, you should not eat the blood. You shall spill it on the ground like water. So when you kill an animal, a kosher animal, You have to spill its blood. We're not allowed to eat the blood that's in the animal. That's called kasher. Like when you kasher something, you actually take out the blood. You may not eat within your cities the tithe of your grain, or of your wine, or of your oil, or the firstborn of your cattle, or of your sheep, or any of your vows that you vow, or your donations, or the separation by your hand. So all those tithes that you do, that we have to do one for the Cohen, for the Levite, and for the widow and the orphan. For the poor person, there's like a tithe. There's like 3 tithes at least that I'm aware of. So those tithes, you can't eat those in your cities. You actually have to take those to Yerushalayim. Now, let's say you live in Brooklyn, or you live in Australia, or you live in South Africa, or let's say we're like in a situation where you can't get to Yerushalayim. Like, what are you supposed to do? So you can give. Well, I know in Israel it's interesting. What they do with all these tithes is they give it to the animals at the zoo. Now, I think that tithing is really only for Eretz Israel. Like when you live in it. So if you live outside of Eretz Israel, you don't have to give tithes. I'm pretty sure about that. You might want to ask a rabbi, but I don't think if you live outside of Israel, this doesn't apply to you. So you're not tithing anything. Tithing is very specific. It's specific to Eretz Israel. Now you're supposed to give a tithe of your money. That you do anywhere you live in the world. But when it comes to your actual produce and your animals, you only do that, I think, in Israel. But again, check with a rabbi. Okay. But you shall eat them before the Lord your God in the place the Lord your God will choose you, your son, your daughter. See, women again. Women are not excluded. Your maidservant, your manservant, your maidservant, and the Levite who is in your cities, he shall rejoice before the Lord your God in all your endeavors. I mean, how many times does God need to tell us to be happy? Beware lest you forsake the Levites all your days upon the land. So don't forget about the Levites. Don't forget about them. And don't say, oh, that lazy Levite. No. Don't get into that whole cheshbon in your mind that the guy's not working and he, he doesn't do anything. No, we're not allowed to think that about the Levites. When the Lord your God expands your boundaries as he has spoken to you and say, I will eat meat because your soul desires to eat meat, you may eat meat according to every desire of your soul. So, man, look, dude, sometimes you just get a real craving for a burger, kosher, of course. You're allowed to eat meat. We don't have to be vegetarians. We don't have to be vegans. If you have a thing for meat, you have a real tiner for meat, as long as it's kosher, you're allowed to eat meat. If the place your Lord your God chooses to put his name there will be distant from you, see if you happen to be living super far away from Yerushalayim, you may slaughter of your cattle and your sheep, which the Lord has given you, and I have commanded you, may eat in your cities according to every desire of your soul. So go ahead, man, geschmack. Like, no matter how far, you can be up in space. You can have kosher meat up in space. But as the deer and the gazelle are eaten, so you may eat them. The unclean and the clean alike may eat of them. Meaning if you're you're not allowed to eat non-kosher. Like a deer can become non-kosher. So how could a deer become non-kosher? If it's not slaughtered properly, if you find a deer dead on the road, you're not allowed to eat that. That's trefa. Like you're not allowed to eat. There's ways of making, and there's parts of the kosher animal you're not allowed to eat. So it's very specific, which we haven't gotten all much into kosher yet, but we will. However, be strong not to eat the blood, for the blood is the soul. You shall not eat the soul with the flesh. You shall not eat it. You shall spill it on the ground like water, talking about the blood. You shall not eat it again, in order that you be good for you and that your children after you, and you do what is proper in the eyes of the Lord. So God's watching. God's watching what we're doing. I know, like, we say, oh, Hashem's up there. Hashem's way far away from me. God doesn't really care what I'm doing. Like, we get that into our mind. By the way, that's an other God that we start thinking and believing in, is when we say that God's like really far away. That's not really, Judaism says, no. Hashem's actually paying attention to every single person. However, your holy offerings which you will have and your vows you shall carry and come to the place that the Lord chooses, Yerushalayim. I mean, it doesn't say it in the Torah. It does not say Yerushalayim in the Torah, but everybody knows it's Yerushalayim. Come on. And you shall make your burnt offerings, the flesh and the blood, upon the altar of the Lord, your God, and the blood of your sacrifices shall be poured upon the altar of your Lord, your God, and you shall eat the flesh. So after you sacrifice the animals and you do it properly, then you can eat them. You can eat them. Not just the Kohanim and the Levites. It seems like you yourself could do it. Keep and hearken to all the words that I command you, and it may benefit you and your children after you forever when you do what is good and proper in the eyes of your Lord, your God. Just do the right thing, man. It's like, so, okay, what is the right thing? Like, how do I know? Well, that's why we have an instruction book. It's called the Torah. Okay, that ends the second aliyah.